All right, question of the day. What is a genre or a game that has felt daunting to you? Because for some people, the 18XX series is something they've wanted to get into, but they haven't found a good entry point. And there are games that Rio Grande makes that are kind of intro levels to it, but not really because they don't have all the mechanics. There's 18 Chesapeake, which hoped to be one. But today, I finally found the game. I found the game that is the intro to 18XX games without compromising anything major and without giving up the fun and feel, but without extending it too much or any of that stuff. Today we're talking about 18 Royal Gorge and a long subtitle that's as long as that Jesse James movie. A lot of stuff in this game, but it takes the concepts of 18XX and it is an 18XX game. However, there's some simplicity to it, and we're going to talk about that as we do the teach and then as we talk about final thoughts. So let's take a look at how this game plays, what you do in it, and we'll come back up and talk final thoughts. All right, this is 18 Royal Gorge. Now, first of all, you'll notice the art in this game looks way better than any other 18XX game. Also, look at this. Money cards, no paper money. Also, curiously over here, we've got a coal, fuel and iron company and a gold company. That matches with the gold symbols you'll see out there. And then the fact that when you buy tracks, it comes from the steel market. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is like any other 18XX game, except one thing, this is clearly meant to get new people into playing the genre because there are only 5 companies in the game when you play. Now, there are more companies, but you only play with 5 of them. You have to use Denver, Rio Grande, and Santa Fe, but the other ones can be mixed around. And what's great about that is it makes it so much faster because in games past where you have 10 companies to run trains for, it just bogs down and gets dull at times for people who aren't super interested into it, right? But with only 5 companies at max running 2 trains at max, it actually kind of flies. Now, Carl's going to make fun of me for that based on the pure amount of time it took to play the last time we played, but that's because one of our friends was over who is chatty, and he knows that. But you'll also notice the stock values are not ups and downs. It's just left to right. So everything that can be simplified without losing the beauty of it is still here. All right, let me explain what you're going to do on your turn. This is the rounds. So we have a stock round. In the stock round, you can buy or sell shares of stock. Now, in the yellow phase, which means a certain amount of these event cards hasn't been turned over based on the trains discarding, you can only buy start companies in the yellow phase. That means you can only buy stock from those top 2 companies. You can only set the price for them in that yellow range, and you can currently only in the yellow spaces, in the yellow era, put out yellow tiles. These upgraded tiles will allow you to put more stations out and allow you to have more better kind of manipulation around the board. You're going to bid, buy and sell stocks. If you sell a stock, you cannot then buy that same stock because if the president sells a share of the stock, it tanks the stock by 1, which means that you would sell it, drop the price, and then you buy it back. You cannot do that. You can buy 1 stock at a time, but you can sell as much as you want at a time. You'll go around until everyone passes, and then you do the operating round. Now, there are private companies which you will invest in at the beginning of the game. There's 5. You'll invest in them. This is one of the alternates that came with this. It's Doc Holliday, essentially, or Annie Oakley, or Madam Holiday. It's one of the 3 characters you could be. You're going to have to pay them from the company, and it tells you how to do that when an event happens. The other ones are things like a silver mine, where you'll just get income. But you'll notice in the top right, all of these give you income during the game. Now, they can also be sold off to a company for their services, or if it's a mine or something like that, for a set amount of money, half, double, or the same amount. The operating round starts by, you're going to lay tracks. You're going to buy as much track. Now, you have to pick a column of the color that you're buying. So if we're in the yellow phase, we can only buy yellow, but you'll pick a column. The first one is free, second's 10, third is 20, fourth is 40, 30. And then from then on, as many as you want, up to 6 is $40 a pop. So let's say we buy 3 train tracks. That would be $30. This goes here, and the money from that $30 comes from the company's money, not your personal money. That's a big difference because when you invest into and buy shares, money from those shares goes into the train company's money. Anyway, the company will pay for that iron from here, and that will go here. Then if you had bought shares into the iron company or the gold company, later on, you'll get money based on what's there and the dividends pays out. Anyway, you'll buy your tracks, you'll place them out. There are certain rules about connecting. They have to be connected. Can't run off the board in such a way as this. You can't dead end into a track that it can't work. So you actually have to be careful about how you play these. And some of these tiles are limited there. These outside spaces are external spaces, and they give you a certain amount of money based on what area you're in as well. So once you've laid your track, you can then buy a new station. Now, the first one's going to be free. You put that out there. Then you buy a station and put it out. The reason you do that is, for instance, right here, this company cannot get through this city because it does not have a station here. So it is blocked. So it has to find a way around. But if you have a station, let's just say that this city would have been here instead. Now you can run through there. So that's why you want to put more stations out. Plus, the more stations you put out, the further your reach extends. However, in order to put a station out, it has to be connected to your original station. Anyway, you'll then run your trains. But technically you should have already, you'll run your trains. So that means the amount on your train. So this is later in the game, but an earlier one is 2+. Now that means you can go 2 dots. It doesn't mean you have to start at your 8. Let's just say we're running the AV right here, okay? Doesn't mean you have to start here and go out, but it has to pass through there within the level of 2. Now, when it says 2+, what that means is 2 big dots and as many as you want of the town. So if we were to run this from here, 1, 2. That's as far as we could run, but we would pick up the income here. Let me just show you what it would be before I knock the board around. So it's going to be 30 for here, 10, so that's 40, 50, 80, into here is 110. So that will be $110 of revenue. Now you can choose to divide that up amongst shareholders. You'll take the full amount of the money and divide it by 10 and pay that much per share. So let's call it 100 instead of 110. Everybody would get $10 a share. Or you can put the money into the railroad company. If you do that, it causes the stock value to drop. However, if you pay dividends out and it's twice as much, well, first of all, if you pay dividends out, it rises by 1. If you pay dividends out and the dividends are twice as much as the stock value, so let's say it was $50 right now, and we made $100 in revenue, this would move up twice. If it's 3 times this, it would move up 3 times. It just helps get those stocks valued up. The reason is, at the end of the game, you're going to be playing for the most personal cash, and you will get cash based on the stock value of all your certificates. You can only have 10 certificates. That would be any shares and things like that in a 4-player game. That number changes depending on how many players you have. Then once you run your train, you can run up to 2 trains, by the way. But once you run your trains, you'll then have the opportunity to buy a railroad. Well, in the first turn, you're not going to have a railroad because this comes after running trains. You'll skip that. You'll buy your train, if it's available over there, out of company money. And then you will go to the next operating round once everybody plays. The only people that will play, though, are the companies that have been invested in yet, which is the phases. Now, usually that's going to happen automatically, but there may be a time where nobody invests in one of those companies over there, and so it just doesn't play. So the president of each company will take the action. So you are not the company. You, as the president, will take actions for that company. Now, you may want to listen to input and advice from your other investors. You could have somebody who has equal shares as you, but they bought them later, which means they're not the president. There's other rules about you can never own more than 60% of a company, and you can never sell more than if there's 50% in the bank pool, which means you could get stuck being the president of a company if you're not careful. And somebody could. It's harder in this game for somebody else to take your stock, but just so you know. Anyway, you'll do that again. Then you're going to get income for the gold. So gold will go out here on the board if you cover up one of these tiles. So a gold piece will go on it. And then on your route, if you run the route that runs through that, you'll take that off, put it over here, and the game starts with none. And it'll be worth $50 on the run. Plus, now when the gold pays out, it pays out the highest open amount. So it gets up to $350, which is $35 a share, just for doing nothing really. So it's pretty sweet. Anyway, you will keep doing this until trains, anyway, and then you'll discard a train. You'll keep doing this until that deck says the end game is triggered. So you're running stock rounds and then 2 operating rounds. There's debt involved. There's other little funky things like that where only one company can actually have access to the Rio Grande Gorge, and it's a monstrous amount of points there. Not one character, one company can have access there. So if you invest in that company, you know at least for a lot of the game, that company is going to be worth a lot of money just because if you run completely through the gorge, it's 50, 10, it's $90 right there for just that one little section. Anyway, at the end of the game, you'll count money. Person with the most points wins the game. If you cannot buy a train, you have to do emergency fundraising, which means if your company doesn't have enough money to buy a train, you have to use your personal funds. If you can't do that, you got to sell off some stock in an emergency round. The reason that might happen is because some trains will rust. That means that this train will no longer be usable. It rusts by 4. There'll be a card in there. Now, some of these cards seem a little out of order, even though it says put them in 1 through 25. So just be aware of that normally a 4 train will rust level 2 trains. This one it says that in places, but the card in position order that actually rusts the trains is not until after that first train is revealed. So just know that. And maybe it's just if you keep dealing, you would see it. But I just felt like that was a little off there. But other than that, that is 18 Royal Gorge. All right, that is 18 Royal Gorge. Now, first and foremost, I want to say I love this game. Shocker, but I love 18XX games. But the problem is it's hard to get them to the table with my crew because they don't want to play them for 4, 5, 6 hours. This one, the runtime says 2 to 3 hours. It can. The problem is you got to be engaged, right? You can't take a lot of time chatting and talking between, unless you want to. If you want to do that, that's fine. But just know that you got to kind of have to be engaged the whole time for it to really speed along at that clip. First and foremost, art. The game looks great, right? It looks really, really good. It is the best looking 18XX game. The art on the table looks good. There's even some variation of the tiles to where they don't just look like the same yellow and green and brown tiles. They actually have some nice look to them. The board itself looks awesome. The cards look awesome for the private companies. And the money. The money's not paper money. It's these little money cards you're talking about shaving 30, 40 minutes off the game. I'm not even kidding. Not having to count money and count change that's paper money. It's so much faster, so much better. So art and components looks fantastic. You still got to put stickers on the little wooden tokens when you get them, but that is to be expected. Unless I just saw something the other day, I think it's 1830, whatever, the Chicago City of the Big Shoulders game is going to do screen printed ones, which is nice. But this one doesn't have that. But that's the only thing I'll knock it on the components because everything else looks really, really good in this game. It actually looks very inviting to the table, even though it's an 18XX game. There's still a lot of tiles sitting over to the side, the railroad tiles. Let's talk about theme. I actually like this one. It does something different. It kind of takes in. There are other 18XX games that do this, but this one's going to see. I think more people are going to see this game just because of the quality of the components and quality of the game. But it takes the story of the Royal Gorge and the forging of it, and the one company that actually made it across, and then the other companies you have to pay them and go into debt to them or help them out there in debt to those companies. So there's a lot of thematic flavor to this game in an 18XX game. And to me, that's really cool. And there's a couple variations you can do with that. You can make the Rio Grande company better or worse. A couple little things you can do with that. But the theming is great. Mechanics. Let's talk about the 18XX mechanics in general, and then we'll talk about the actual how to playability of this game. 18XX it's a complex system, but it has one of my favorite mechanics of all time. That is indirect player control, which means I don't play as the blue train company. I play as an investor who might invest in the blue train company, or later I might sell my shares out of that and not be the president anymore, giving over control of the blue player or the blue railroad company or whatever it's called to this player. I love that. That's my favorite thing about 18XX games. City of the Big Shoulders, indirect player control through stock companies is one of my favorite things. I love stock mechanics. Now, this one, we'll talk about in a minute, makes it a little simpler, but it's stocks in the sense that you buy shares into a company. The company does well. You sell those shares of stocks, and you make money on it. The person with the most money at the end of the game wins, private money. You're running routes of trains. And this one, the rulebook does a good job of clarifying what that really means. Essentially, you're going to count the spaces that your train can go, and you're going to try to put that 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 city route onto the board somewhere as long as it passes through one of your stations. I think that's really great. And then you're going to buy trains, lose trains, invest in other players' companies, have stock rounds. That's the mechanics of an 18XX game. It's a very economic-driven train game. So that's how those play. Art direction components. Art direction, there's no really symbols in this game. You just have the player tracker that tells you stock round, operation round, etc. That's really it. There's a couple symbols like income and what certain things do, but other than that, everything's pretty well explained, even in the cards of the event deck that you'll cycle through at the end of each round and other times. But as far as the mechanics of this game and the gameplay goes, I love this one. This one does something that I love really well, and that's normally in an 18XX game, you'll have 8, 10 companies out there, and so each of those companies has to run an operating round, which takes a long time. This one, you choose 5 of the companies. 2 of them are set always, and then the other 3 are changed in. And you only play with 5, which means even in a game of 4, it feels like you're always kind of invested because you literally might be invested in every one of the companies, or at least invested in a couple to where you only have to sit out and not pay attention to an operating round as opposed to 4 or 5. So to me, that's really great. It takes that operating phase and speeds it up because there's only 5 companies to work through. Now it's stock round where you buy and sell stocks. The thing I really like about this one, it simplifies that stock mechanic. Gone is the need to go up or down on the stock market. Sometimes you go up or down. Sometimes you go left or right, depending on what type of action is. That's gone. Here, it's just a left to right stock market track. And I love that. I think that's so much simpler. And yes, is it more realistic to have certain things bump into a different, I don't know. I don't know the math on that, but I really like how this one does it, where it's just left to right. Stock value either goes up or stock value goes down. To me, that's fantastic. And I think that really makes the whole stock part more accessible. Running the trains is still hard. Now, I know some people hear me say that and be like, that's the dumbest thing ever. How could you say it's hard? Well, it is kind of, because you still have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to what you're building out there. You have to make sure that when you put a new track out, you follow the rules of track placement. You have to make sure that when you're running your routes, you're not accidentally counting too many or going around or making a U-turn that you can't make or going backtracking on a track. You can never use the same track twice in an operating round. You could in 2 different operating rounds. So you could have 2 trains, and that's the max you can have, but they can never go on the same track, which just makes sense. So it's not super complex. And usually what's great, because there's only 5 companies and they're much tighter on the board, one person, especially on those shared tracks where there's 2 stations in one spot, one person will count a route, and you probably can follow that same route if it's a really advantageous route. So if it's $110 for them, it's probably $110 for you based on kind of following that same route, especially if it's a shared city. So those little tweaks make it great. To me, the rule book on this one's fantastic. It's not the 1A, 1B, 1C or whatever, like war game manual. It's more of a rule book, like a board game rule book, including like here's important rules, here's things you might miss. There's 1 or 2 things that are wrong, not in the rule book. I think, again, I'm not entirely sure, but I think there's a card that's out of order in the deck, because it says trains rust and then that train shows up after that. It shouldn't be that way. It should be the opposite of that. So probably just a little tweak that we can change. That only matters on the back of the cards. You don't actually see the back of the cards the entire game, but it tells you how to put them in order. So make sure you switch those out to make sense. But really and truly, this game's fantastic. The private companies are cool. The fact it's very thematic, going into debt from one company to another, paying Doc Holliday to watch the train and be that kind of train manager for you. I just think it's so good. This is an 8 out of 10 for me. I absolutely love this game. I really do think I could get this one to the table again with the same group I played it with, because 3 of us really, really enjoyed it. 2 of us really, really loved it. 1 of us liked it, and Carla likes them somewhat. She doesn't love running the routes, but she likes the whole economic side of the thing. So I think this one is really good about possible replayability. And to me, that's key, because I love this style of game. It's just so hard to get it to the table. And I haven't found even an app that scratches this itch like an 18XX game. So that is 18 Royal Gorge. I'm Bryan Drake here on the Dice Tower. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Dice Tower Bryan and get your magnets and shirts in quick, because those orders will be cut off in just about a week and a half here. So I'm Bryan Drake. Until next time, we'll see you.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another video from the Dice Tower. Hey, you want to learn more about us, communicate with us? We have a Facebook group, we have a Discord channel, lots of different ways to get involved with the Dice Tower. You can find that in our Linktree link below. So just click that, it will take you and you can communicate with us on Facebook, join our Facebook groups. There's lots of cool things that you can find and become part of the Dice Tower. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Tom Vasel.